Giving my troubles up, laying my sorrows down today. Take me to the stream. Give me someone upon to lean, to catch all these tears as you take all these burdens from me. We will go to the river and we'll lay it all to rest. Give all your troubles up, lay all your sorrows down today. Thank you all so very much for taking this journey in song with me. Welcome to all of you. It's so wonderful to be here, as I said before. We may all be in different locations, but I can sure feel the energy and feel the love through the screen today. So beautiful. I have the pleasure today of introducing a remarkable man that will transport us to an ecosphere of recognizing and refamiliarizing the ground around us today. He's a proud yet humble father and husband. In October, Bayo dropped pertinent knowledge with the young sages, a message that many of us will never forget. Personally, he's inspired me to look deeper into the meaning of my name, my indigenous background, and my blood origin. He made me realize that we're all living vessels that are here to tell the story of our ancestors. Our personal experiences fill us up continuously, day in and day out, everything we experience, everything we live through. But our expression, the way we dance, the way we move, the way we speak, the way we sing, it all serves to highlight the little rainbow fractals of all of our history. He accentuated that no matter our background, we all have crucial importance in this world. His lighthearted humor, his storytelling, and his analogies are etched deep in the minds and hearts of those that he touches. The next voice that you will hear after mine is that of the one and only Bayo Akomolafe. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaisha, my sister. This is not going to be easy. I greet you all, my brothers and sisters, my mothers, and fathers and aunties and uncles around the world that are joining us in this time. I feel there's a prophetic, there's something brimming here, wrestling with us, some kind of prophetic energy that wants to burst open and do things. And I've been feeling this for a while, and I'm not going to hold this myself. I'm here with a very, very heavy heart. But that's good, because that means I'm in touch with the gravity of things. And gravity is how we know we're grounded, isn't it? So I thank you all for showing up, for being here. My brother and sister, Maurizio, Zaya, and the whole team putting this together. We are here at a fugitive moment, poised at the liminal edges of things. And if you feel that energy with me, if you feel there's something strong here that wants to be heard, if you feel there's something that wants to be born, and we're being called to midwife this thing, and we don't know how to yet hold or name, then I would like you to greet each other. This will probably crash the internet. But I don't care. Can we unmute everyone for a while? Let's just hear our voices and speak to each other.
Good morning, everyone.
Thank you, Bayo.
Portland, Oregon. Hello, everyone.
Love for everything and for coming.
Glad to be here with all the activists.
And everyone from San Francisco.
Oakland, California. Everyone.
Spaces and hearts.
Pretty cool.
Saying
This is the moment.
Each coming up as speakers. Everyone.
and every one of the geniuses out there. Let my country go.
Is our
They all come up from the street, and this guy's already had over. Luckily, he's already,
can watch the recording
they're all
instantly though, Sherry. I don't think you can go back and watch it.
and not one of them had a mask on. So
Thank you.
For being here.
Because you just have to calm down again, and then I'm thinking, my next show would start. Maryland is supposed to open.
It's like a gushing forth of of streams. Thank you. I always love to hear that, to see that happen. And knowing that you're here with me and I'm here with you gives me a little bit more strength to say the things that I want to say. Though I doubt I'll be able to hold myself together through it all. And again, that's fine. I think this is a space for falling apart together and composting ourselves enough for what wants to be born to sprout. I come from a place that has a love affair with the ground, so that we tend to notice that in times of crisis, the thing to do is to fall down to the ground. We have libations, we have prostrations. We know how to descend when things get troubling. We know that at the places where we fall is where our treasures lie. So we don't give too much attention to rapture, the promise of rapture. We are attuned to the idea of rupture, to the cracks and the smooth surfaces of things. And speaking about smooth surfaces, I come from a nation state that doesn't have smooth surfaces. I'm Nigerian, And one of the things that is known about the place where I grew up, which is Lagos, is that the roads aren't that good. We have lots of potholes. Those potholes are political events. They're not just geological moments or the failure of the bureaucratic system. They're actually sites of deep conversation about the failure of Nigeria to catch up with the rest of the developing world. And so it's a site of shame, unfortunately. If you were to drive with a Nigerian across the country, you would find many people swearing at the government when we go down and come up, with those damned potholes over and over again, coming down and up. I once nurtured ambitions to become president of my country. I don't share it because I think it would be a demotion to be a president right now. Nothing can transcend being a diaper changer. President would be a demotion, surely. But yes, I once thought I would like to lead my country and my people. And for anyone wanted to take up that task, you have to deal with the subject of potholes. As I started to explore the colonial ideas, behind potholes and our imperatives of smoothing the road, I came to terms with different wisdoms about potholes. So what if a pothole is our cultural resilience, our inability or incapacity to keep up with the project of development? What if there's something vital there? What if it's the lingering and haunting spirits of ancestors bursting through the ground, not wanting everything to be covered over by asphalt and gray and steel? What if something wants to happen there? Of course, voicing these ideas and questions where I come from didn't quite catch fire. I was deemed to be mad. I left the university system. And so, but I kept up those questions. Those questions were vital for me. What if the pothole is a place of power? It wasn't until last year in Brazil that I found the real power of those questions. Just before the COVID-19 phenomenon hit, I ventured into a place in Rio de Janeiro called Cais do Valongo, and I met a lady called Baquita. Baquita was a slave from hundreds of years ago, and what was left of Baquita, her bones buried in the ground, was still speaking through the cracks, through this giant pothole that had opened up. You see, the government of that time, the empire of Brazil, was to receive a princess from Portugal. And so they covered the places where the slaves had landed in Brazil. They covered everything up. They decorated the place and they raised a monument to humanity. But in more recent times, those cracks started to show. And it was as if Baquita and hundreds of thousands of slaves squeezed together, their bones squashed together, started to speak out and say, we want to be seen. We want to be heard. The pothole became a portal, became an opening in the wound of the earth, wanting to be noticed. Justice wasn't enough. And so I asked myself a question: what does it mean as I looked down at this young woman, eternally young woman, frozen as it were in the ground? I asked myself the question: what does it mean to be with her? To be with this lady, to meet her at her point of need? What does it mean to listen to this moment? What would justice look like for Baquita today? What would a resolution, in these times when we're looking for resolutions, maybe in forms of vaccines or racial justice and equity or climate justice, what would a resolution look like for Baquita? That's my question. I have a different question this morning, or evening rather, almost midnight here in Chennai. February 23rd, someone who looks like me was gunned down in Georgia. His name, Ahmad Arbery. And I say this with tears and struggle because, yeah, it's a point of deep sorrow for me. And I suspect it is for you as well. I saw a picture of, if you don't know the story, I don't think I want to go through the story, but it's for everyone who knows the story, it's, the points of it are clear enough. A young man, 25 years old, jogging down the street, gets killed by a father and a son, the McMichaels. At some point, I asked myself the same question that I asked about Bakita. What would justice look for him, for this young man? What would justice look like for Ahmed Arbery? I've learned that they have good lawyers, and yet something still seems wanting. There's still a lot left to be desired. I saw a picture of Ahmed's grandmother, and I noticed a tragedy, the double tragedy, not just of losing her grandson at the burial, which was 6 days later after the killing, not just of losing her grandson, but of dissociation. Because as many of you might know, that the Yoruba people from West Africa, where I come from, I'm a Yoruba person, were a significant portion of the people, the millions of people that were taken across the Atlantic. And this grandmother watched her grandson get lowered into the ground. In my culture, that is taboo. An elder person is not allowed to bury her own child or her grandchild. It is not permitted. There's a curse that is released on the land when that happens. You can only bury someone who's older than you. And I noticed not just the tragedy of loss, but the tragedy of dissociation, the tragedy of distance. And the same question again and again, what does justice look like for this young man? So I want to leave you with that question. I'm not ending now. We're only going deeper. Not for you to find an answer, but to let it stay with you as it has stayed with me. I would venture to submit or contribute some responses. It might look like a compensation, for instance. I've read some pieces in the media suggesting that they will be heavily compensated, or that maybe justice is the prosecution, the successful prosecution of Ahmed's killers. Or maybe it's something else. Maybe it's a racial justice program that gets people to understand the real dimensions of these kinds of killings and the loss suffered by families of minorities. And I heard someone else say that it's cleaning up the district attorneys and all the people who stood on this case and did not prosecute it immediately. And still, even with that, I don't feel satisfied. There's something in my heart that says this notion of justice, this rule of law gets in the way of deeper transformations. That something else wants to happen here. That is not about just following the letter of the law. A couple of things that feel wanting here or lacking is the idea that justice seems to perpetuate the myth of villainy, which might seem satisfactory in the moment, but only adds to the pain of the paradigm that we all suffer from. So what it might do in the moment is to say that the McMichaels are evil. I would probably do that if I was in the situation. But that myth, that story of evil versus eternal good might replicate the same troubles that have led to that boy's killing. Another thing that justice seems to be doing here is pretending that these cases are discrete, divorced from the case of Breonna Taylor or Nia Wilson or Trayvon Martin or any other Black person or colored person that has been killed. It pretends it is divorced from ecological genocide. It pretends it's divorced from transatlantic slaveries and the losses that have been suffered. That we're discrete individuals. If we treat Ahmed Arbery's case and we solve it, then it's case closed, but it's never case closed. Justice, as is presently articulated in modernity, does not know how to meet ghosts. It doesn't know how to deal with ancestry. It doesn't know how to deal with a past that still haunts and lingers. And having said all that, it seems to me that justice, it looks more and more like a weak and more fragile version of itself, like the wizard that's supposedly powerful. But once you bring him out of the emerald curtain, you find out to be fragile and vulnerable. The materiality of justice is what I want to speak about today, and how justice might get in the way of transformation, and how it seems we're being called into a deeper kind of service, a deeper kind of meeting of each other. There's a story about justice that we tell all the time, that justice is an ideal in the distance, like a shining city set upon a hill. And there's a highway that leads there, and we're all on this highway. All we need to do is just speed up, and eventually we will arrive at this shining city. We will get there eventually. If we stick to the track, we will arrive. That is the story, the myth of the justice systems that rule us, the resolution systems that invite us to stay on the highway. But what happens when the highway becomes problematic? Because what the highway wants us to do is to speed up. Just keep speeding. Just keep accelerating until you get to that shining, elusive city that keeps on retreating into the distance, never fully appropriated, never fully embraced. I'm of the opinion that we cannot outpace the highway. And maybe other forms of action need to happen. Other forms of weird things need to happen. Now, I don't count myself a Christian, but in a world that is entangled, abandonment is not possible. So I want to quote a prophet from the Bible, Jeremiah, who in times of fugitive chaos and upheavals said something that I want to echo here. It's in Jeremiah 6 verse 16, and a friend of mine shared this with me recently, that when you get to the crossroads, stop at the crossroads and listen for the ancient paths, and then you know the way. Stop at the crossroads. The invitation here, just like my big sister Pat has just articulated, and everyone here is articulating together with your silences and with your notes and scripts, is that this is not just a webinar. This is a place where we stop. This is the place where we corrupt the imperatives and the algorithms of the highway. And this is the place where we do something weird together. What kind of weird things do we do on the highway? Well, let's explore together. First of all, I'd like us to convene a court, a people's court. And who are we going to put behind the dock? It's not the McMichaels. It's not any villain. It's not Donald Trump. It's not the right wing. It's not something that is conveniently evil. It's justice itself. And I want to put 3 cases before us. See if we can bring to bring to light, uncover. You know, the very notion of apocalypse, etymologically speaking, is the uncovering. So this is the moment of uncovering, and what we're uncovering are these cases that we put in order to understand what justice is actually doing. Yes, Lisa, we're trying justice itself. The first thing I want to talk about is climate justice. Prior to the COVID-19 phenomenon, it was all the rave. Do you guys remember climate justice? Climate change? All those eons ago, it was a thing. But it seems that we put it on a back burner. Now we're all about COVID-19, coronaviruses, SARS, MERS, and all of that. Well, I was reading a book called the Environmental Handbook. And on that cover, on the back cover, it said something like, I'm paraphrasing here because I can't quite remember what it said. It said, there is no tomorrow, something like that. We have to take urgent steps to reaching climate justice. And all of us can understand that, I think. Most of us would understand that we have abused the planet and some kind of stoppage or stopping is required. The irony of this book is that it was written in 1970, April 22nd, 1970, on the first day of Earth Day. That was when the first Earth Day was inaugurated. Think about that for a moment. We've been talking about urgent steps to be taken since 1970. We've been convening conferences designed to wake us up and get us doing things about the environment since the 70s. We've known about harm to the environment since the 70s. Why do we still feel stuck in the same way or in the same place? Why does climate justice seem to recede into the distance? The more it seems like we're just about to hold on to it, it retreats away. It just melts away into the distance. Why is that the case? When I was growing up, I heard the story of the hare and the rabbit and the tortoise. And you might know this story. We tell it a different way where I come from. It's still this way, that the hare once disturbed the tortoise and said, you know what, let's race together. And the tortoise said, I will beat you if we do this. And the rabbit said, you know what, let's just do it anyway, because I'm sure that I'm the fastest animal alive. And so they convened at a place and they started to run. And the rabbit dusted, like we say in Lagos, dusted the tortoise and ran out into the front. But just as he met the horizon, he saw another tortoise come in front of him, and which was confusing to him because he thought he left tortoise behind. Where is tortoise? Oh, why is tortoise showing up in front of me? And no matter how much he tried to upset the distances between him and the tortoise, tortoise always showed up in front, and tortoise eventually won. And the moral of the story that we're told is never run with a tortoise, or never invite a trickster into your home, or something like that. But I have another lesson about this. I have another moral of the story. And maybe that is, the highway seems to be getting in the way of our advancement or transfiguration or transformation. Maybe there are other things to do apart from getting ahead. And in moments when it seems like arrival is continually postponed, maybe other kinds of actions are invited. Maybe the thing to do is to leave the highway behind and to seek the crossroads. And so climate justice seems to retreat into the distance. I've told many people in America, anytime I visit a country, that the conscientious actions, the righteous actions of people and activists in America, or in the West in general, part of those actions are not allowed to see their consequences. For instance, when you take very painful steps to to demarcate or arrange your waste, and you put plastic here and this here and that here. The story of our time is that we have a recycling system that will take all of that, recycle it, and bring it back in this economy that works, this cyclical economy that will recycle back our waste to us. The stories that have been invisibilized and are not being told is that most of that waste comes to Africa. Most of that waste is shipped to India and becomes the playground of people. I grew up on the playground of righteousness, of waste dumped in our backyards. It seems that the future is not green after all. It's brown. It's made of shit. And we're being invited to touch that, to pay attention to that. So what happens if climate justice is problematic itself? What happens if the very concept is materially configured in a system that does not know how to meet the energies, the trickstery energies, the calls of our time? The same could be said about racial justice, and that's the second case as we try justice together. I grew up being told that I should strive for equality, that my blackness was not enough. And it was a form of pathological inadequacy. And I should do my darndest, my best, to be like those BBC speakers on TV who mouthed and articulated English in ways that my big lips could never articulate. And I was told these stories growing up through school. Now, the best thing to do is to try to approximate the genius of the West. We were never allowed to ask, though, why we should strive for equality and under what terms equality was supposed to function. Because equality can only function in a paradigm that presumes that everyone is composed of the same kind of stuff. That we're all the same after all. That differences should be overlooked. I've been seeing this when people talk about non-duality. They presume that non-duality means that we're all one and that all differences should be kicked aside. And this oneness is a homogeneous mashing of minds so that our differences, our bodily experiences are not to be held in their material majesty. I don't think that's the notion of non-duality that my people would subscribe to, or that wants to work for all of us together. Equality is problematic in a system where we should strive to have equal bits of a carcinogenic pie. And I've said this more than once to Pat's hearing. I don't want to have an equal space on the Titanic. I don't want to go down having an equal seat, in a ship that is problematic. Instead of equality and equal representation, are there other places of power that we can stay with, that we can be with? Are there troubling openings in the plantation that we can follow through, sniff out our ways through, and be with? And then lastly, the case that I want to share here is about the COVID-19 phenomenon. The media is all agog about this hope, this grand messianic hope for the vaccine that is yet to come. About 90 teams of scientists, I hear, last time I read, are doing their best to create a vaccine. A vaccine is supposed to be embedded and encoded with the hope of renormalization, a restoration of homeostasis, so that when we have it, we can get back to normal. I don't know how many of you are feeling that normal, though, is traumatic. And the normal we're supposed to get back to is probably even more problematic than the kinds of normals that we have to adjust to at this point in time. Moreover, what can a vaccine do to address the problematic stacking of animals in wet markets? What would a vaccine do to address the ecological clearing of trees to make way for capitalists and neoliberal incapacitation of lives? and dispossession of communities and displacement of worlds. How does a vaccine address that? If a vaccine is justice in the COVID-19 phenomenon and equality is justice in the racial justice and equality discourse, and climate justice, a place where we're sustainably at equilibrium with the pace of nature, something we rudely call nature. If all of that is what justice does, then justice itself gets in the way or is problematic. When I was little, younger, a wind of mischief blew across my face, and I decided to do what my friends had always pushed off or postponed. Don't try this at home. One day in the market with my family member, an uncle, I decided to peep between my legs, to literally crouch and peep between my legs. Just before I did it, my uncle, smelling the whiff of my my childish mischief, slapped me upside the head and warned me, said, never ever attempt to do that. You might be wondering what's so big about bending down and looking between your legs. You see, in Nigeria, and I think some parts of Africa, you don't go to the market and do that, because once you do that, you will see spirits. You will see people with 3 heads. You will see monstrous beings floating. I don't know how many of you have actually read Ben Okri's The Famished Road. You might get a sense of what I'm talking about. You would see spirits, 3-headed beings, multi-armed creatures, animals that have no names, colors that have no senses or names yet, or titles. You would meet spirits. And it's a dangerous thing to meet spirits and masquerades where I come from, especially if they don't call to meet with you. I wish I did it though. I wish I had some epic story to tell every one of you, how I saw spirits or how I met this kind of being or that, but I didn't. But I feel that just the invitation to do something weird in a public place is some kind of model for what we're being called to do something weird. Another thing we say where I come from is, if you take dog poo, not dog poo, dog eye poo, not, please don't take dog poo. The extract from dog's eyes, if you take it and put it in your own eyes, then you will see what they see at night that makes them bark. You will see spirits as well. I didn't do that as well. I'm not about to do it, except I'm called to do so. But the point here is, we need a weird kind of politics that repositions us in a paradigm that is designed to keep us stationed, adherent or tethered to a notion of justice. If justice gets in the way of our transformation, then we need fugitive openings. We need other ways of being in power with the world. And I want to speak a bit about the kinds of things that we can do to disturb our positionality in a world that isn't designed for us to thrive in, isn't designed for people like me or you to thrive in. One of the things we can do, and maybe this is a good time to take notes, is to subvert power's exclusivity to power. A mentor, Fred Moulton, says one does not speak truth to power. And the reason he says that is because we know in our bones that to speak truth to power is to reinforce power centrality. No, one does not do that. What you do is to open up other places of power. And how you do that is to invite other notions of history and myth-making and storytelling. And I can embody this in the story of how Yoruba people subverted their slave masters. The whole history of the Santeria religion is based on people actually hiding their gods and goddesses under the nose of their masters. The story is told that when those slaves wanted to gain some kind of reconnection with their homelands instead of brute force, because they found out very quickly that brute force didn't work, that fighting these people with guns didn't work. What they did instead was to operate some kind of third way power, is what I call the third way. Not extreme, not this extreme or that extreme, not villainous extremities or trying to win and be victorious and claim justice. They found a way to insert their own paradigms and to allow it to gestate in the womb and the bellies of the colonial systems. They inserted Ishu in the name of Paul. They inserted Ogun and Yemoja in the names of Peter and Mark and whoever you want to, and Jesus and Mary. They inserted the names of their gods. And in public, when they're invited to worship the gods of their masters, they will call out the names of their masters, but they will call it out in a way that was not appropriate of their masters' gods. And they'll call it out in a way that was not appropriate. And all their masters thought they were fools and said, leave them be. They don't know what they're doing anyway. But in that hidden place of power, in that dark place of descent into the fugitive cracks of rupture, they found a way to keep alive their connections with homelands. I feel that's what we're being invited to do. Not just to catch on with the streams of power as we know them to flow, but to find places of rupture. How do we find places of rupture? We need to seek out the trauma. We need to find ways of touching trauma. In a system that is premised upon distance, I like to say that the main trauma of modernity is dissociation. It's not that it's a bad thing. It's that the pain of loss probably in some way led to people wanted to form sedentary systems, wanted to form communities. We wanted a way to say, I want to know with certainty what tomorrow will bring, if I will have food for my family. And so they created modern systems. They found a way to plant their feet in the ground. And those systems became communities moving away from hunting and gathering nomadic systems. And they built cities of steel and gas and asphalt. And all that has led to a universalizing colonial structure that we're trapped and incarcerated in. The way out has proven to be elusive. We're finding ways out, but what we do not recognize is that the way out is not something in the distance. The way out requires us to shapeshift, us to become something different. So one does not speak truth to power. One disappoints power's claim to exclusive power. Another thing I think we should do, I was talking about touching the trauma, forgive me, is we need to meet the places where it hurts. I'm a trained and recovering psychologist, recovering from my own education as a psychologist. And one of the things that is evident to me is that the discipline and the practice as it was ingested in my own community, we've forgotten the art of grieving. We've forgotten the art of sharing pain as a resource. We've forgotten the ways of noticing that confusion is a gift. How we have learned to heal trauma in modern cities or modern arrangements is to distance ourselves from the trauma, is to create safe spaces. And so healing is associated with avoidance. If you avoid it long enough, then it will go away. Just like Bakita. The way to deal with Bakita is to bury Bakita. The way to deal with Ahmed Arbery is to bury him finally. And then we can get back on track. The way to deal with the COVID-19 phenomenon is to invite people to socially distance themselves for a while and then get back to work as soon as possible. If you notice, everyone seems to be bored of social distancing right now. It's as if, in spite of the fact that the virus is increasing its reproduction value, it seems the nation states just decided, you know what, money matters. Let's just get back to the windmills and keep on producing. The economy matters. And if we don't take care of the economy, people die. It seems the system realizes it made a mistake. And so it wants to self-correct and resume the algorithm of appropriating human bodies as vessels of reproduction of neoliberal capitalism. And so this idea of healing as avoidance keeps us from noticing that trauma is how things get different. My people scar their faces and open up wounds in their flesh to remind themselves that it is the pain of incompletion that makes us community. Until we come to a place where we recognize that we're not whole, discrete subjects of justice systems or rules of law, we will continue to perpetuate this pain that is felt in Ahmaud Arbery's loss or Neil Wilson's loss, or the kinds of losses we have no way to respond to today. So we need to find a way to touch the trauma. And the last thing I'll say is about this is history is not official history, and the official stories of what is happening today. Don't let that get in the way of the crisis. I don't do rap music. Like, I don't rap. I've never known how to do so. I've never been that cool. But if you study the history of rap, which is connected with Issue, the Yoruba trickster, surprisingly, you will find that rap music, calypso, and all these bacchanal aesthetics, these dance and carnivalesque technologies came from an understanding of a world that is inherently unstable. So we're being fed official accounts of what is happening at the moment. And what we need to do is to find a vaccine, get back to normal, get back on track, resume the project of progress, resume the centrality of the anthropos, and keep on being human beings, proper citizens, good citizens. Unfortunately, that story is complicit in the reproduction of our pain and suffering. So how do we subvert that? We find other ways of telling the stories of what is happening to us. Another mentor of mine calls it speculative fabulation, which is a fancy way of saying that the future is not still, that we can tell other stories about what is coming. I think of speculative histories and speculative pasts. I want to tell the story of how the slave ship was not just a vessel of suffering, but was also a vessel of generativity. In fact, my people already do that. They tell the story of how Eshu traveled with the slaves because he knew that even though this was a vessel of suffering, it was also a rite of passage. It was also an invitation to become other than what we are or what we were in our homelands. It was a creolization of bodies. It was difference happening and becoming new in itself. And so the invitation of our time is for us, in my humble opinion, is for us to descend. It's for us to fall into the cracks, into the ruptured places, because the surface isn't working. The highway is taxed and tolled, and we're not thriving in the highway anymore. Whiteness is not working for white people. It's not working for us. Progress isn't working for us. Arrival has been delayed over and over again. Climate justice now seems to be a trending thing, without dismissing or invisibilizing the beautiful work that is done by people across the world. It just seems like the more we dive into it, the more we want to grasp and embrace it in some final way, the more we want to meet it on its own terms, the more it retreats into itself. And lastly, racial justice. The call to equality. Some of us are noticing that paradigm itself is shaky and unstable. And many of us are recognizing that we don't want to be equal. We don't want an equal place on the table. We want other rooms entirely. We want to be in the same house. We want to share differences. We want a thriving ecology of many kinds of bodies. We want manifold beings in the world to thrive. We don't want to be the same. We don't want to be leveled. We don't want to transcend the material and escape into a spiritual bypass haven. We don't just want to sing kumbaya and tell ourselves that everything is all right. This place that we're being invited into is not a place of joyful, celebratory futures. I apologize. And that's why my heart is heavy. It's not a place of easy arrivals where we might show up intact. It's a place where we're being invited to touch our griefs, our many griefs. I've been invited more than once to tell the story of 2030 or 2050. And recently I wrote a very harsh letter to someone who is now my brother and friend, who invited me to tell the story about 2030. And I rejected that. And I said, I come from a people who do not have the luxury of thinking that far ahead. We have to think, what will I eat right now? What will I eat tomorrow? What happens right now? And it seems all of us are now in that situation. The COVID-19 phenomenon has intensified the soup and catalyzed our indeterminacy. And it seems the road is foggy. We can't even see that far into the highway. Well, this is an opportunity, like the good Reverend said. This is an opportunity. I don't mean to sound entrepreneurial, but this is an opportunity to go down together, to find ways of being hospitable to the strange and the queer, to find ways of not just making do, but making sanctuary, to find ways of building assemblages of grief, altars that celebrate the minoritarian lives, to find ways of not just bringing things up to our level, but descending to the level of furniture and bacteria and microbes that are our ancestors, our parents, our siblings, our children yet to come. So I think Ahmed Arbery, is a figure not just of justice, but a justice that won't work. And I imagine his family, even though they've long buried him, February 29th, I imagine his family saying, don't dissect him. Don't make him another piece in your museum. Give us his body and we will bury him. We will pray to the ancestors. We will know how to make our celebrations. And we will know how to entreat the ghosts that want to be heard. We will know how to make food and meal and merrymaking for the invisible that is surging through the cracks. We will know how to meet Bakita and the lives that have been lost, flattened in our attempts to hasten our transcendence over the material inadequacies or inconveniences of a world that is bigger and exceeds our justice making. So give us his body and we will bury him. And that is my invitation to you, my brothers and sisters. Let us descend together. How you do it where you are, I don't know. But I find that the data that is streaming forth from opening places across the planet will stream through you in your feelings, in your tears, in your confusion. And at the moment you find yourself on a crossroad, away from the highway, or even smack dab in the middle of the highway, you will know what to do. Thank you.
Bayo, thank you for this. There's no words for this multifaceted journey you took us on. I feel instead of questions, maybe we can just ask everyone to give us a word or a feeling. Where are you? How is this? How is this offering landing in your heart? And if you may, just in the chat, share a word with us, so we can just feel each other.
Yeah, grounded, touched, honest, resting, resonant, cracked open, humble, seen, somber, connected, hope, the gratitude,
heavy,
descending, heavy, tired, opened up, grief, the truth, poignant, solidarity,
surrendered,
ready, lifted, obliterated.
timely, compassion.
Thank you, Bayo. Source speaking.
Sorrow, humble, shaken, cracks open,
On the
descend.
verge, turtles. At last,
joyful
the life,
opening,
composting.
authentic possibility.
Let's be
inspired.
weird, raw truth, confused, excited. Transmission, grateful, connected across road. Unflinching life, motherly, raw, dying. Reckoning, thoughtfully invited. Connected.
Broken open.
Beyond intellect, challenge to transmission, moved in between, challenge to be courageous, sinking, transcended voice, sobered and humble, grateful for authenticity, empowered.
In the total mystery, we trust and love.
Friend and chaos, re-remembering, shattered.
In the soil and earthworm.
Hurtly and raw.
Not rapture, but raptured.
Subvert.
Thank you. Thank you, Bayo.
Thank you, brother.
Victoria, is there anything you would like to reflect, or we could take a little break before we journey with?
I'm descending right now with Bayo. Thank you for that invitation. Let's just do something to send Bayo some love, because what he shared in the place from which he shared was so deep and so vulnerable, and just want to send you some energy and some love. So if you take your hands together and just rub them together, just feel the warmth that you're generating in your palms, and then just send it out. Send your energy and your love and your heart to Chennai, India. Feel the warmth in your hands and the tingling sensation as the energy from your heart transmit across the globe to Bayo. Thank you for showing us your deep, beautiful heart. And then bring those hands to your own heart. Thank you. Let's go ahead and take maybe a 5-minute break, or yeah?
Yeah.
Thank you.